December 1945. Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. The transport truck lurches to a stop outside a sprawling complex of wooden barracks, and Greta Hoffman feels her stomach clench. Through the canvas flap, she catches her first glimpse of American soil as a prisoner. The air smells different here, cleaner somehow, colder. There's no acrid chemical tang burning the back of her throat, no metallic taste coating her tongue. For 3 years, those sensations had been as constant as breathing. Now their absence feels wrong, disorienting, like a phantom limb. She's 26 years old, a certified munitions inspector from the Dynamit Nobel factory in Troisdorf, and she's certain she knows what's coming. She's heard the stories. Every German woman packed into that Liberty ship crossing the Atlantic had heard them. Americans would work them to death. Starvation rations, brutal guards, revenge for the war. Greta touches her throat reflexively, feeling the rawness there, the permanent damage from years of breathing propellant fumes and explosive dust. At least, she thinks with bitter resignation, she won't have to endure it for long. Her lungs are already compromised. The cough that wakes her every night, the tightness in her chest, the bloody phlegm she's learned to hide. She gives herself maybe 2 years, 3 if she's unlucky. The truck's tailgate drops with a metallic clang that makes her flinch. An American soldier, impossibly young with freckles across his nose, gestures for them to disembark. His uniform is pristine. Not a patch, not a stain. Greta climbs down, her legs unsteady after weeks at sea and days on trains. The December wind cuts through her thin coat, but she barely notices. She's too busy scanning for threats, for signs of what's to come. The other women cluster together, 17 of them, all from various munitions facilities across the Reich. Some are crying quietly. Others stand rigid, faces blank with shock or defiance. Greta recognizes that look. She wore it herself 3 years ago on her first day at the factory, before the chemicals and exhaustion ground it away. A woman in American military uniform approaches. Not a guard, Greta realizes, an officer of some kind. She's older, maybe 40, with steel-gray hair pulled back severely. She speaks in accented but clear German. "Welcome to Fort Benjamin Harrison. You will be processed, assigned quarters, and given work assignments. You will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. You will receive adequate food, medical care, and safe working conditions." Safe working conditions. The words hang in the cold air like a cruel joke. Greta almost laughs. Almost. But the sound catches in her damaged throat and becomes a cough instead, harsh and wet. She covers her mouth, tasting copper. When she lowers her hand, there's a pink stain on her palm. The American officer's eyes narrow slightly, but she says nothing. Just makes a note on her clipboard. The processing takes hours. They're photographed, fingerprinted, examined by a doctor who shines lights in their eyes and listens to their chests with cold metal instruments. When the stethoscope touches Greta's back, the doctor's expression shifts. He's young too, like everyone here seems to be, with dark circles under his eyes that speak of long shifts. He listens for a long time, moving the instrument across her ribs, her spine, her sternum. He asks her to breathe deeply, and she tries, but the breath catches halfway, triggering another coughing fit. He waits patiently, then asks in careful German how long she's had the cough. 3 years, she tells him, since she started at the factory. He writes something down, his pen scratching loudly in the quiet examination room. He asks what she did there. Munitions inspection, she says. Propellant mixing, quality control, exposure testing. What kind of protection were you given? The question confuses her. Protection, he clarifies. Masks, ventilation, safety equipment. Oh, she almost smiles at the naivety. A cloth, she tells him. We had cloths dampened with water. We tied them over our faces. His pen stops moving. He looks up at her, and there's something in his expression she can't quite read. Disbelief. Horror. He asks another question, but she's already retreating into herself, into that numb place she learned to inhabit at the factory. The place where nothing can touch her. They're assigned to barracks. Building 7, a long wooden structure with a coal stove at each end. The bunks have actual mattresses, thin but present, and folded blankets that smell of soap. There are windows with glass panes, not broken or boarded. The floor is swept clean. It's nicer than her room in Troisdorf had been, nicer than the factory dormitory where she'd slept in shifts with 30 other women, where the walls wept condensation and the air always tasted of cordite. That night they're fed. Beef stew with carrots and potatoes, thick slices of white bread, butter that's actually butter and not ersatz margarine, coffee that's real coffee. The portions are larger than anything Greta has seen in 2 years. She eats slowly, waiting for her stomach to rebel, but it doesn't. The food is warm and rich, and it doesn't taste of chemicals. Several women cry as they eat. One vomits from eating too quickly after months of near starvation. Greta finishes her bowl and feels nothing. The numbness holds. She's learned not to trust kindness. It always has a price. The work assignments come the next morning. Greta and 5 other women with munitions experience are designated for the camp's small ordnance workshop. It's not a factory, the American supervisor explains through a translator. They're not producing weapons. They're disassembling and cataloging captured German ammunition, sorting components, documenting manufacturing marks. Quality control, essentially, Greta's specialty. The workshop is a converted warehouse, spacious and well-lit with overhead electric lamps. The December sunlight streams through high windows. There are workbenches, tools, storage racks. Everything is organized, labeled, clean. And then she sees them, hanging on hooks along the wall like strange rubber faces. Masks. Not cloth, not damp rags, but actual masks. Black rubber with round glass eyepieces and cylindrical filters protruding from the front. There are dozens of them, all identical, all waiting. The supervisor, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and kind eyes, introduces himself as Mr. Patterson. He's civilian, not military. A safety officer, he explains. His job is to ensure they work in safe conditions. He gestures to the masks. Before anyone handles any ordnance, he says, you'll be fitted with proper respiratory protection. Greta stares at the masks. Her heart is beating too fast. There's a ringing in her ears. Proper respiratory protection. The words don't make sense, can't make sense. Mr. Patterson takes one mask down from the wall. He handles it carefully, almost reverently. This is the M2 Light Service Respirator, he explains. It filters particulates, chemical vapors, and explosive residue. The filters are replaceable. He unscrews one of the cylinders to show them. Each filter is good for approximately 40 hours of use, depending on exposure levels. After that, you replace it. Never reuse an expired filter. He's speaking English now, and the translator is struggling to keep up, but Greta understands enough. She learned English in school before the war. She understands every word, and each one is a knife. Mr. Patterson picks up a laminated chart from the workbench. This, he says, shows the permissible exposure limits for various chemicals you'll encounter. Nitroglycerin, trinitrotoluene, mercury fulminate, lead azide. The chart has numbers, graphs, color-coded warnings. He explains that they'll work in 2-hour shifts with mandatory breaks in fresh air. No exceptions. If anyone feels dizzy, nauseous, or experiences breathing difficulties, they stop immediately. Greta's hands are shaking. She clasps them together, but it doesn't help. The shaking spreads up her arms into her shoulders. Mr. Patterson approaches her with a mask. "Let's get you fitted," he says gently. The translator repeats it in German. Greta doesn't move. She can't. The mask hangs between them, black and alien and impossible. Mr. Patterson's expression shifts to concern. He asks if she's all right. She nods, but it's a lie. Nothing is all right. Nothing will ever be all right again. He steps closer, explaining how the mask works. The straps adjust here and here. The seal must be tight against the face. He demonstrates on himself, pulling the mask on, adjusting the straps, checking the seal. His voice becomes muffled but still clear. "See, simple." He removes it and offers it to her. Greta takes it. The rubber is thick, substantial, nothing like the thin cloth she'd tied across her face for 3 years. The weight of it in her hands feels obscene, criminal. She thinks of Marguerite, who'd worked beside her at the mixing station. Marguerite with her constant cough, worse than Greta's. Marguerite who'd collapsed one day in the spring of 1944, blood pouring from her nose and mouth. They'd carried her away, and Greta never saw her again. She thinks of Anna, only 19, who developed tremors in her hands from mercury exposure. The supervisors had moved her to a different station, but the tremors never stopped. She thinks of all of them. The women who'd worked in the propellant section, where the air was so thick with fumes you could barely see. The women in the detonator assembly room, handling mercury and lead compounds with bare hands because gloves reduced dexterity. The women who died, who'd been injured, who'd been sent away when they became too sick to work. And the entire time this existed. This mask, this chart, this knowledge, the Americans had it, which meant the Germans had it too, had to have had it. The technology wasn't new. The science wasn't secret. They'd known. Her government, her supervisors, the engineers and managers and officials, they'd all known. They'd known that the work was killing the women, and they'd known how to prevent it, and they'd chosen not to. They'd chosen damp cloths and dismissive words about occupational hazards and inevitable risks. They'd chosen to let women breathe poison, day after day, year after year, because masks cost money and filters cost money and mandatory breaks reduced productivity. The numbness cracks. It doesn't break gently, it shatters. Greta hears a sound, a horrible gasping sob, and realizes it's coming from her. The mask falls from her hands, hitting the concrete floor with a dull thud. She's crying, but it's not like normal crying. It's something deeper, more violent. Her chest heaves, and each breath brings another cough, another taste of blood, another reminder of what was done to her. What she allowed to be done to her. Mr. Patterson is speaking, alarmed, reaching for her. The translator is trying to ask what's wrong. The other women are staring. Greta can't stop. 3 years. 3 years of breathing death because she'd been told it was necessary, inevitable, the price of service to the fatherland. 3 years of watching women sicken and die because she believed the lies about occupational hazards and acceptable losses. And here, in an enemy prison camp, on the soil of the nation she'd been taught to hate and fear, someone hands her a mask and a chart and tells her that her health matters. That her life has value, that she deserves protection. The irony is unbearable. The betrayal is absolute. She sinks to her knees on the cold concrete, still coughing, still crying. Her throat is raw. Her chest feels like it's being crushed. The damage is done. Permanent, irreversible. No mask can fix her lungs now. No chart can undo 3 years of poison, but it could have prevented it, should have prevented it. Mr. Patterson crouches beside her. He doesn't touch her, doesn't crowd her. He just waits, patient and concerned. When she can finally breathe again, when the coughing subsides to ragged gasps, he speaks quietly. The translator kneels on her other side, repeating his words. "You've been injured," he says. "Industrial injury. We'll get you to the medical staff. They'll help." But Greta shakes her head. She needs him to understand, needs someone to hear this. She forces the words out in broken English. "We knew," she whispers. "We had to know, they had to know." Mr. Patterson's expression changes. He understands. Of course he understands. He's a safety officer. He knows what proper protection looks like, what it costs, what it prevents. He knows exactly what her words mean. "Yes," he says simply. "They knew." The confirmation is worse than any punishment, worse than any guard's cruelty or starvation ration. It's the truth, plain and undeniable, and it destroys her. She thinks of the propaganda they'd been fed, the speeches about sacrifice and duty, the promises that their work was vital, that the Reich valued their contribution, the assurances that the discomfort, the sickness, the deaths were unfortunate but unavoidable. All lies, not mistakes or ignorance. Lies, deliberate, calculated lies told to women who'd believed in something larger than themselves. Women who'd endured hell because they thought it mattered, because they thought they mattered, but they hadn't. Not really. They'd been disposable, acceptable losses, numbers on a production report. The other women are crying now too. Not all of them understand English, but they understand the masks, the chart, the implications. One woman, Helga, picks up the mask Greta dropped. She stares at it like it's a religious artifact, like it's proof of God or proof of his absence. She'd worked in a cordite factory in Bavaria. Her sister had died there, lungs destroyed at 23. Another woman, Elizabeth, touches the exposure chart with trembling fingers. She'd been a chemist, educated, trained. She'd known the compounds were toxic. She'd requested better ventilation, better protection. She'd been told to stop complaining or be replaced. The knowledge had been there. The capability had been there. The will had not. Mr. Patterson gives them time. He doesn't rush them, doesn't demand they get back to work. He just waits, this American enemy who treats them with more care than their own people ever did. Eventually, slowly, they begin the fitting process. Mr. Patterson shows each woman how to adjust the straps, how to check the seal, how to test the valves. He's patient, thorough. He treats the process with gravity like it matters, because it does matter. It should have always mattered. When Greta finally puts the mask on, the seal tight against her face, the filter clean and new, she can breathe. Not well. Her lungs are too damaged for that. But she can breathe without tasting chemicals, without feeling the burn of propellant fumes. The difference is staggering. She'd forgotten what clean air felt like, or maybe she'd never really known. At the factory, even outside, the air had been tainted. The whole town had smelled of cordite and nitrates. Here, filtered through American rubber and carbon, the air is neutral, safe. It's the kindest thing anyone has done for her in 3 years, and it's the cruelest, because it proves that the suffering was optional. That every cough, every bloody handkerchief, every funeral had been preventable. That she and thousands of women like her had been sacrificed not for the fatherland, not for victory, not for anything meaningful. They'd been sacrificed for convenience, for profit margins, for production quotas. The work begins. They sort through crates of captured ammunition, documenting markings, separating components. Every 2 hours, Mr. Patterson calls a break. They remove their masks, step outside into the December cold, breathe fresh air. It's mandatory. No one is allowed to refuse. Some of the women weep during these breaks. Others smoke cigarettes provided by the Americans. their hands shaking. Greta just stands there, feeling the cold air burn her damaged lungs and tries to process the weight of what she's learned. The days blend together. The work continues. The masks become routine, but they never become normal. Every time Greta straps one on, she thinks of Marguerite, of Anna, of all the others. Every time she checks the exposure chart, she calculates the damage that could have been prevented. Every time Mr. Patterson enforces a safety break, she confronts the casual cruelty of her own government. The medical staff monitors them closely. Chest X-rays, pulmonary function tests, blood work. The American doctors are thorough, methodical. They document the damage with the same careful attention Mr. Patterson applies to safety protocols. Greta's diagnosis is chronic chemical pneumonitis with pulmonary fibrosis. Permanent scarring of the lung tissue. Progressive. Irreversible. The doctor, the same young man from her intake examination, delivers the news with genuine sympathy. He prescribes medications to manage symptoms, recommends exercises to maximize remaining lung function. He tells her she'll likely live a normal lifespan, though she'll always have reduced capacity. He's trying to be kind, trying to offer hope, but Greta knows better. She's seen how this ends. She's watched women with her symptoms decline, drown slowly in their own damaged lungs. She has maybe 10 years, 15 if she's lucky. She's 26 years old and her life is effectively over, not because of the war. Not because of combat or bombing or any of the violence she'd been prepared for, because someone decided that her health wasn't worth the cost of a mask. In January, a new group of POWs arrives. More women from munitions factories, these from the Ruhr Valley. They have the same coughs, the same damaged lungs, the same shocked disbelief when they see the masks and charts. Greta helps with their orientation. She shows them how to fit the masks, how to check the seals. She explains the exposure limits, the mandatory breaks. She watches their faces as they realize what she realized, watches the numbness crack, the betrayal sink in. One woman, barely 20, asks her why. Why did they do this to us? Greta doesn't have an answer. She spent weeks searching for one, trying to find some logic, some justification, but there isn't one. Just callousness and calculation, just the arithmetic of acceptable loss. Because they could, Greta finally says, because we let them, because we believed it was necessary. The young woman starts crying. Greta holds her, this stranger, this fellow victim, and they grieve together for what was taken from them. For the futures stolen by men who knew better and chose worse. The workshop becomes a strange sort of sanctuary. Within its walls, protected by American masks and American regulations, the women can finally breathe. They work carefully, methodically, following Mr. Patterson's safety protocols with almost religious devotion. They take their breaks, check their equipment, monitor each other for symptoms. They've learned too late what protection looks like, what it feels like, what it costs, and the cost, they realize, is nothing. The masks are cheap. The filters are cheap. The breaks reduce productivity marginally, but not significantly. The entire apparatus of safety that their government denied them would have cost almost nothing to implement. That's the final insult. The final betrayal. They weren't sacrificed for something important. They were sacrificed for nothing, for a marginal increase in quarterly output, for slightly higher profit margins, for the convenience of not having to maintain safety equipment or enforce break schedules. Their lives, their health, their futures, traded for nothing. February brings snow. The Indiana landscape turns white and clean, and Greta stands outside during a safety break, watching the flakes fall. Her breath mists in the cold air, each exhalation a reminder of her damaged lungs. But she's breathing. Still breathing. Inside, the workshop is warm. The masks hang on their hooks ready. The exposure chart is laminated, protected, permanent. Mr. Patterson is explaining something to one of the new women, patient and thorough as always. This is a prison camp. She is a prisoner, an enemy of the state that provides her with masks and charts and mandatory breaks. The irony never stops being painful, but it's taught her something. It's taught her that the cruelty she endured wasn't inevitable, wasn't necessary, wasn't the price of anything meaningful. It was a choice made by people who valued production over people, who saw women as expendable resources rather than human beings, who had the knowledge and means to prevent suffering and chose not to. That knowledge changes everything. It can't fix her lungs or give her back the years she lost. It can't bring back Marguerite or heal Anna's tremors or undo any of the damage, but it can clarify. It can illuminate. It can strip away the lies and reveal the truth. And the truth, however painful, is better than the lies. Better than believing the suffering was noble or necessary. Better than dying for nothing while thinking it was for something. Greta adjusts her mask, checks the seal, and returns to work. Her hands are steady now. The shaking has stopped. She knows what she's doing, knows how to protect herself, even if the protection came too late. She knows the value of a mask, a chart, a mandatory break. She knows what her government stole from her. And she knows with absolute certainty that she will never forgive them, not for losing the war, not for the destruction or the defeat, but for this, for the masks they never gave her, for the protection they denied, for the lie that her suffering was inevitable, for the truth that it never had to happen at all. The work continues. The winter deepens. And in a workshop in Indiana, German women breathe clean air through American masks and confront the devastating reality of how little their lives had mattered to the people they'd trusted most.